I was hooked up to machines, barely able to lift my arm, and my own uncle leaned so close I could smell the greed on his breath. He whispered, sign the house over, or we make sure the doctors stop trying so hard. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes in my arm, and the man who carried me on his shoulders as a child was threatening my life over square footage. But here's what he didn't know, what none of them knew. I had already made one phone call 3 days earlier. One quiet, strategic phone call that made every single thing he was about to do completely, catastrophically irreversible. They thought I was the weak one, the sick one, the one without power. They handed me all the power the moment they walked into that room. Drop your country below. I want to know where my real ones are watching from. And if you believe in karma, hit subscribe. Because what happens next? Even I still can't believe it. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand what happened in that hospital room, you need to understand what kind of family I was born into. My name is Danielle. I'm 34 years old. And I spent the first 3 decades of my life being the family's invisible daughter. The one who showed up, did the work, asked for nothing, and got treated like furniture. My grandmother, Nana Ruth, raised me after my mom passed when I was 7. My father was out of the picture before I could even form a clear memory of his face. So it was just me and Nana Ruth in her small but beautiful house on Clover Street. She worked 2 jobs. I learned to cook at 9. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And that house, that little yellow house with the white shutters, was ours. My uncle Gerald, Nana Ruth's son, visited maybe 6 times a year, always with empty hands and a full list of complaints. He never helped with her medical bills, never drove her to her appointments, never called on her birthday until she stopped expecting it. But every single visit, he'd walk through that house like he was already measuring for new furniture. His wife, Tamara, was worse. She'd run her fingers along the countertops and say things like, "This kitchen has such potential." Gerald. Right in front of Nana Ruth. Right in front of me. I said nothing. I always said nothing. When Nana Ruth was diagnosed with early-stage dementia 2 years ago, I moved back in full-time. I quit my apartment lease. I restructured my remote work schedule. I became her caretaker, her driver, her medication manager, her person. Gerald offered exactly 2 things during this period. 1 casserole dish from Tamara, and a suggestion that we look into memory care facilities. That was code. I knew it then. Get Nana Ruth out of the house. Make the house available. What Gerald didn't know was that Nana Ruth, during a very clear and lucid period 8 months before her condition worsened, had sat down with me, an estate attorney, and 2 witnesses. She was sharp that day. Sharp and deliberate. She signed the house over to me. Legally. Notarized. Filed with the county. Done. She also told me something that day that I've carried like armor ever since. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't you let them take what we built, baby." Not a single brick. I promised her I wouldn't. 3 months after that, Nana Ruth had a major cardiac event and was moved to a long-term care facility. And 6 weeks after that, I was in a car accident. Nothing I caused. A distracted driver ran a red light, and I ended up in Mercy General with a fractured collarbone, 2 cracked ribs, and a mild concussion. I was helpless. I was medicated. And somehow, within 48 hours, Gerald and Tamara knew exactly which room I was in. That's when he leaned over my bed and made the biggest mistake of his life. The moment Gerald finished his little whisper, something shifted inside me. Not fear, not panic, clarity. Because 3 days before that accident, before I even knew I'd end up in this bed, I had called my attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia Chen, to update my emergency legal contacts. Standard stuff after a car accident. But during that call, I had also asked her one specific question. If anyone attempts to coerce me into signing over property while I'm hospitalized, what exactly can we do about it? Patricia had laughed. Not meanly, just the laugh of a woman who had seen everything. She told me exactly what to do. So when Gerald pulled back from my bed, looking smug, looking like he'd already won, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I pressed the nurse call button. A nurse appeared within 30 seconds. I looked at her calmly and said, "Can you send security to my room, please? And I need you to note the time in my chart." Gerald's face went white. Security arrived in under 2 minutes. I told them, in front of Gerald and Tamara, who was hovering near the door like a getaway driver, that my uncle had just made a verbal threat to my life contingent on me signing over property. I used those exact words. Verbal threat. Contingent on property transfer. I'd practiced them in my head the second I saw his face appear in my doorway. The security team escorted them out. But I wasn't done. From my hospital bed, still in a gown, collarbone fractured, I called Patricia. She filed an emergency police report that same evening. Gerald's little whisper, which he thought was private, had actually been partially picked up by the room's monitoring equipment. Not perfectly, but enough to be documented. The police visited Gerald and Tamara at their home 2 days after I was discharged. Gerald, apparently, tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding. Tamara cried. Neither of those things helped them. Here's where it gets truly satisfying, because Gerald, in his arrogance, had also made a separate critical error in the weeks before my accident. He had gone to the county records office trying to challenge Nana Ruth's property transfer, claiming she lacked mental capacity when she signed. He had hired a low-rent attorney and filed a formal contest. Patricia had been waiting for that. We had everything. The estate attorney's notes from the signing, Nana Ruth's cognitive evaluation from that same month showing she met full legal capacity. 2 independent witnesses. A notarized document tighter than a drum. His challenge was dismissed in 41 days. He paid his attorney fees. He paid court costs. And because of the coercion complaint, he was issued a formal no-contact order, keeping him away from me and from any property I hold title to. The little yellow house on Clover Street is mine. Filed. Recorded. Untouchable. Gerald and Tamara don't come around anymore. There are no more casserole dishes, no more comments about kitchen potential. The last thing I did before I closed this chapter was go back to Nana Ruth's care facility, sit beside her, hold her hand, and tell her it was handled. She may not have understood every word, but she squeezed my hand. That was enough. They came for me while I was flat on my back in a hospital bed. And they still lost. Some people mistake stillness for weakness. I've never made that mistake.